Welcome to the Keelhauled podcast. I'm your host, CaptainLogun, and we've got a lot of Sea of Thieves news to cover today, so tie yourselves to the mast and hold fast. Ahoy there, pirates. I hope you had yourselves a good week and a good weekend. I know I did. This is the first episode of 2023. We are now going into the close of the season for year 4 for Sea of Thieves, and we're going to be talking about Grogmanay. We're going to be talking about what you had to do. Hopefully you did it, as well as the new ledgers, some talks about PvP. Also, the next adventure is we're on the horizon. We're getting that soon. And I want to talk about 2022 in a whole. I also want to talk about what I hope to do personally for my pirate in 2023. All that and more on this week's episode of Keelhauled Podcast. Before I get into any of that, I have to thank the patrons because they're the ones that went over to patreon.com/Keelhauled Podcast, just like you can, to support this content that I help put out. So thank you to People's Republic, L Cute, Balls, Bam Bam Bagel, Captain Hasco, Captain Hayes, Chateau Neuf, Zombie Killer, Cloud, Cosmic Johnson, Static Mirror, Davram TV, El Jefe Esteban, Fergatron, Jabaro 5, Carl Embo, Kazia the Rogue, Lumpy SRQ, Dub Goose, Evil Morpheus, Xbox Mike 29, Murphy Lives, Mutinous Max, Regis Stella, Rust Belt Kid, Norwegian, Captain Dasm, That Kilted Guy, Tien Professor, Real Big Tuna, Big Bad Pad, Mina Fairy, Music Me, The Lore Chronologist, Deadeye Dre, Hager Owl, Jeff H, Ghost Boy 20, Evil Martha, Peter Miller, Rooski Doo, Skinny Matt, Thor Von Blitz, Windsor Chris, and Zam Wow. Thank you all so much for your support. It really does mean the world to me. First up on today's docket, let's talk about Grogmanay, which is one of the celebrations that happens over in the UK, and we have it every year. We've had it for many years at this point, and this is the third Grogmanay that we are celebrating. There is a small event that was about 3 days long. Hopefully you guys got a chance to go in there and actually do it. I think as of recording right now, there's about 6 hours left, so there's no chance that you would have listened to this and thought, oh, I gotta go do it, but hopefully you got some time this weekend to jump in to do it. It was definitely a little bit easier this year, I think, to do it, and a lot better than what it was last year when we were trying to do some of these different things to try and get our next tick mark on the actual grog. What is it? Cup? I guess it's a tankard. That's what I'm thinking. So there were 3 different items that you could get access to. The first one is a flag. The second one was celebration fireworks, Build Rat celebration fireworks, and then the third one was the actual Grogmanay annual tankard. Now, if you'd never done Grogmanay in the past, you would get the tankard for the first time. If you had done it twice in the past couple of years, then this would have been your third mark on the actual tankard. This is one of the few progressive items that changes without any past iterations. Originally, it was just the original trade company items that would progress as you moved up in the ranks of actual from 0 to 50. With the original 3 trade companies, you'd get different items like a spyglass or a compass or shovel, and those would progress as you got later and later in the actual ranks. The only thing to do that nowadays is really just this tankard outside of the original 3. And then I think the Reaper's Bones was the last one that technically you could do progressive iterations of with the 0 to 50 for their cosmetics as well too. I'm probably missing something, but it's not really relevant. You probably remember and might actually tell me in the future. There were 6 different tasks to be able to do. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 6 tasks. You only had to complete 4 of them to get everything. And most of the things that you had to do were all pretty much copy paste from last year's Grogmanay. The difference this year is that this year, the getting drunk was a lot easier to do in the sense that last year, for example, I was running through this with Caleb, and every time we would get drunk, we would jump in the water. And when we jumped into the water, we noticed that we didn't quite retain the quote unquote drunk status. This year, it's a lot clearer in some aspects. You definitely had to get drunk and you definitely had to throw up. Once you were throwing up or getting sick, that was when the game would actually register any of the things that you had to do. So of the things that you had to do, you had to get drunk. And this was kind of, everyone, I think, all agrees that 3 tankards in the ship, a 4th tankard in your hand, go out to go do some of these things, and then kind of sip on the 4th one while you're doing it. So that way you kind of stay in that state. You had to dig up 2 chests, which can be tough. You had to hit an enemy ship, whether it was another person or a skeleton ship. You had to defeat 3 ocean crawlers. You had to destroy 10 skeletons with fire bombs. You had to capture a chicken, pig, and snake, or you had to defeat a shark. I got all of these done except for the capturing a chicken, pig, and snake. I think those are some of the harder ones to actually do. I think the skeletons are next in line for that, because it really does. It is still kind of tricky when it registers whether or not the skeleton died from fire. But I was able to get this done. I ran it with Kylea the aficionado and Big Bad Pad on a Saturday, and we went out to work on our ledgers, which I'll talk about in a bit here. But we essentially went through the different things. We threw down a gold hoarder and threw up our emissary flag, and then shipped up over to Cannon Cove and worked on Cannon Cove and Wanderer's Refuge for a while, taking turns getting drunk and digging up chests. And we also worked on our ocean crawlers and our skeletons at that point. And for the most part, it was pretty simple. I think when we first loaded in, Patty was already in the water trying to get a shark to spawn. And thankfully, his efforts there enabled me to be able to get the 3 drinks in, get the 4th, and then hop into the water to be able to kill the shark. And that was, once we got that done, that was already 1 knocked out, and we already got our flag. A lot of these were team-based, which was nice. I think the only ones that weren't were, I want to say the chests, and potentially, no, the fire bombs definitely were. The ocean crawlers were. I think the enemy ship was. It's hard to know because you're so in the moment when you're actually doing this that it's hard to go in and check and see, like, okay, who got credit for what. But I'm pretty sure most of this stuff was achievable as a team on a ship, which I hope everyone got a chance to do. I know there's a couple folks that were trying to do it or skipped out on it this season because they either didn't want to or didn't have an opportunity to do it with someone else where it would be a lot easier. I personally tried to do some of this alone the other day when I hopped onto my sloop just on lunch break and headed out to where did I go? I think I threw up an Order of Souls mission and I headed over to Crook's Hollow. Which is usually a pretty easy place because a lot of the time the skeletons spawn in that little 4-way section underneath the actual island, the rock caves and stuff, where the little beetle is on the rock. You know what I'm talking about. And usually you can usually get skeletons to spawn there pretty easily. And I got, I would say like maybe 7 or 8 skeleton done from that one there. But after a while, I just ran out of time for that moment and I had to go do other things. So it was nice to be able to go in and get most of that all knocked out. And then once you're done, you're completely done. And it's nice to put away the whole getting drunk and stuff. Because I really feel bad for some folks that are having trouble with it. In fact, I saw a video on Twitter today where someone was working on the skeletons and they got drunk. They hopped into the water, got on the island, and right as they got on the island, an ancient skeleton spawned. And they were so drunk that they got a few swipes in, but every time they went to shoot it with the Eye of Reach, they missed their hits and they couldn't keep up with the skeleton running away. And it just, I feel bad, man. I hope not too many people ran into that instance, because that's got to feel bad, especially running solo, trying to get some of this stuff done. It's a real shame, but I did complete it. I got my 3rd mark for my Grogmanay annual tankard. I'm very proud of that. And I'm looking forward to the 4th year where we'll be able to get the 4th mark and find out on the 5th year if we get a little hash mark through all 4 or if it changes to a V. It'll be interesting to find that out, because I think year 4 will determine whether or not we're going by Roman numerals or by hash marks on the actual tankard. I don't know why that seems to matter to me, but Grogmanay's done. By the time you're listening to this, welcome to 2023, everyone. I hope you all had a safe New Year's Eve. Mine was very weird. I played board games and ate pizza with my wife and found out that The alcohol that we got was just extremely potent, and just how much I'm not in for potent alcohol anymore. I've gotten those years out of my system now. My 20s are over, my 30s are over now that I think about it, and I'm just not there for that kind of stuff. So I had to put a lot of other stuff into it to get it to taste like something I could actually live with. But it was really interesting because we tried watching a bunch of movies, and there's been a lot of storms in California recently, or at least in my area. So we ended up not losing power. We ended up losing internet, which confused me, but we lost internet for about 12 hours. So there was a lot of pulling out Blu-rays and tossing them into the system and watching special features for movies over the last 12 to 14 hours of that time. But hopefully everyone else had a pretty good holiday as far as the weekend's concerned. Next on the docket, I wanted to bring up the monthly ledgers. This is the second month for season 8. The Banjo and the Hurdy-Gurdy are available for all of the different companies. Hopefully you all managed to get all of those knocked out in the first month. For those of you that haven't, you still have another chance this month. Make sure you're working towards your ledgers. Even if you're just going in for one session, going to get like, I would say like a sea fort, or working on a voyage or something like that, or you happen to sink a skeleton ship or something like that. Always try and think about cycling between the different trade companies. That way you are slowly working on that stuff. Athena and Reapers are always going to be the toughest if those aren't your focus, because you're always going to have to really focus on doing Veil missions, which are the easiest way to get to grade 5 and get the most Athena loot, and Reapers just kind of going out and trying to get as much from other players, which is not too hard if you're good with PvP and able to jump into the battle for Sea of Thieves and hopefully find some defenders who have a fair amount of loot that you can go and turn into Reapers. Those flags really make a big difference in that reputation towards the ledger progress. So best of luck out there for folks that are working on those. I think this last month I was barely pushed out because I'd worked early on my Athenas and Reapers, and I was just barely pushed out of the top because of the Gift and Glory weekend that we had a couple weeks ago. So I just barely missed out on those this month. So I got to go back and grind up the Athena and Reaper's bones, which it's not too big a deal, but just something I got to think about as we're moving into this January month. Also, I got the chance to actually find out what was going on with the whole wall exploit. And it turns out that it is something that's been going on with all of the Battle for Sea of Thieves stuff. And there's some major sweats out there who have tested and figured out that you can put crates up on the edge of your boat, especially for sloops. And what that does is those crates effectively block the damage from either Eye of Reaches or flintlock pistol shots, as well as some cannon shots can prevent you from actually getting top decked. And it's kind of a shame that this is the way players are feeling like they have to play, because at the end of the day, whenever you are in some sort of PvP scenario, players will try and find the most effective means of winning at the least amount of effort, which is typically referred to as min-maxing in a lot of MMOs. You find the most amount of DPS for the least amount of effort, or like work that has to go into it. So for like World of Warcraft, or for like Final Fantasy, you're thinking about the rotation of your spells or abilities that you're using, and what's the most effective means of getting as much damage out. With Sea of Thieves, it's going to be something like learning how to time your cursed shots, or when to use blunder bombs versus double gunners, or what you can do to mitigate getting one balled while you're trying to shoot top decks on someone else's boat, right? And they have figured out that crates on the side of the ship are something that can be done to mitigate this. I don't believe that this is the intended use for a lot of crates. So much like many of the other creative uses of items in the game. I'm curious to find out, like, when the rare staff actually come back from break, because a lot of them are, what they will decide is going to be usable. How often are people doing this? Personally, I think this is mostly relegated to the Battle for Sea of Thieves. It's not it's not preventing sinks. It's mitigating damage. So it's tough to say if this is something that will really be kind of a pandemic of sorts, where Rare will have to step in and make a decision about this. Right now, I think it's something that is just being messed around with, but we haven't seen any word from Rare or any bans coming out of this. So I would say that this is kind of on par with stacking crates or stools or what have you on the anchor. I think that those things are typically things that people will do to try and make it harder for other crews. It doesn't make it impossible, but it does make it harder. So we'll have to see kind of in the future if Rare decides that either things can't be placed on the railing or the anchors. I think that would be kind of the biggest thing that they could do is if there was a way to prevent players from being able to stack stuff on anchors and the sides of the ship. That would probably tick both boxes for people that are annoyed for people stacking stuff on anchors and people annoyed by people stacking stuff on the side of the ships. I think if you take out those two things, the people that are defending against hits and the people that are defending against borders would both have to adjust their playstyle. They'd either have to get better at defending borders, or they'll have to get better at dealing with getting hit from other players with cannons. You'll have to dodge shots, eat between getting knocked off your cannon, step back and hide behind the mast if you need to. Different ways to kind of like, instead of just tanking the damage, you're actually having to adjust your gameplay style, because a lot of this really does come down to putting enough pressure on the boat that it draws cannon fire from the players so that you can send someone over to solidify kills to prevent people from being able to repair the damage that you did initially. Which is kind of the main strategy for a lot of people. It's really hard to get someone with either just boarding or just naval combat, right? And that's kind of where a lot of people are either going to be seeing those extremes where it really frustrates them. Either people are going to be extremely frustrated by how good people are on cannons, or they're going to be really frustrated by people who are really good at locking down a ship to the point where you can't do anything. I think those are extremes. I think a majority of people have a little mix of both. They can get good with a few shots, but really it comes down to immobilizing a ship and putting pressure on the holes that you create, and then trying to have one person who feels comfortable going over, trying to seal the deal, get those kills, try and make sure that you're waiting for that other ship to sink. And that's always tough, right? That comes with practice. So if you're frustrated, it is frustrating, but at the end of the day, it's just a loss. It still gets you to progress a little bit further in your allegiance. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. At the moment, I feel like I am okay with getting losses to continue progressing my way to curses that I want. I just want access at this point. I was able to go down to the Pirate Legend Tavern because I've had some criticisms about not being able to see what's available to me to be able to know like what the driving goals are. So I went down to the Pirate Legend Tavern. And sure enough, everything that is available for Pirate Legends is available through the different merchants that are down in the base Pirate Legend Tavern. You can see the Mysterious Stranger stuff. You can see the Magpie's Wing cosmetics. The only thing you can actually see the curses as well too. So it was wrong of me to kind of criticize this and think that they should open it up. I haven't been able to go double check myself on the Reaper's Bones. I haven't been able to log in to get over to the Reaper's hideout because I just never think about actually talking to the Flameheart Jr. because it's just, I don't know. It's not something I ever think about doing. So I haven't actually checked to see if you can see anything while you're while you're not able to access the Reaper's lair. But if you can, then that kind of solves the other criticism that I had, that there's no idea of what you're going to be able to get, no carrot on a stick to be able to see like what's available to you. But for Pirate Legends, it most definitely is. And I think you have to be a Pirate Legend to be able to even take part in the actual battle for Sea of Thieves, for the Pirate Legend, for the Athena's Alliance, right? So, right now, I am thinking about the curses in the sense of it's a numbers game. Win or lose, I'm still making progress as long as I don't disconnect or get my ship sailed out of the actual circle. So even if I am getting into a fight and anchoring in the middle of the arena, I'm willing to take a loss if I can't win, because I know that at least I'm getting some progress. Obviously I want to win, but it's always been kind of 50-50 for me so far. I've always been about 50-50 as far as like my sinks and my loses and my wins. And that's fair. That's pretty good. You know, if this were Dota or League of Legends or Heroes of the Storm, having a 50% win rate is pro. It's like you're really, really good at the game if you can manage a 50% win rate for most players. Because most of the time players are not playing at 100% of their capacity all the time. So expecting that you should have to, or that they will have to, is kind of a lost cause in my mind. So if you want to actually get in there and get these curses, you can. Even if you lose every battle, you're still making progress. So you can, you know, look at it as like, okay, I'm not getting there as fast as I normally would be if I were winning every battle, but as long as I'm not getting run out of the circle, I'm still able to actually get some progress. It just may take longer than normal, and I might actually learn something while I'm going into all of these. I think right now the biggest criticism that a lot of folks have is coming down to the fact that the wait times can be long, and it seems weird that you don't always get paired up as soon as you would expect based on the average wait time for the hourglass, right? If you look at the hourglass, a lot of times it'll say, hey, it's going to take 2 to 3 minutes for Reapers and 6 to 10 minutes for Athena. So you throw up the Reaper's bones, you subscribe to the hourglass sands, and you open up the war table and you dive, and 15 minutes goes by and you still haven't found a match. You cancel the dive and you come back up and you sail around, and another 15 minutes passes and you haven't been invaded. And it's very odd, because there's been instances where I've talked to people on NA servers who are looking for a match as the same boat type, as the same crew number as me, and we've been opposing allegiances, but we weren't matched together. And it makes me scratch my head and wonder, like, I would have been able to fight against someone that I actually know. That would have been pretty fun. But I couldn't. And that it's kind of strange. So I'm hoping that when the devs get back, they're able to work out a patch that they talked about, where they want to be able to open up the different little buckets that they've got, to make sure that if you aren't fighting someone of the opposing faction, that at least you'll get a fight, even if you're fighting against someone of the same allegiance. I'm still very curious to understand how that's going to work, if they will have to make a change where, like, the mysterious stranger will accept Athena flags to turn in. I don't know if he already does or not, because I don't think I've ever tried. But it's something that I hope will continue to improve the wait times for the actual matches. It seems like a lot of folks are kind of down on the season right now, because it feels like the wait times are the biggest pain point. So I'm very curious to see, will we see something in the future, which I'm thinking that we will, that will help improve the wait times. Because at the moment, you can sit around for a very long time or no time at all. It seems like there's very few moments where you're either jumping in right away and you get a match and you feel great about it, or you're hanging out and waiting. And unfortunately, when you're diving, when you're invading, there's not a whole lot you can really do. You're kind of stuck just waiting. And it feels bad because, as we all know, as many of us can testify over the years, Sea of Thieves can take a lot of your time. And you want to make sure that you're getting the most out of that time when playing. So when you dive, it feels like you are at a disadvantage because you aren't doing something that would normally allow you to progress when you're out and about. And if you're defending, you feel like you're putting yourself at risk because you may not be able to get back to your ship in a reasonable amount of time, depending on where you go or what you do, to be able to properly defend your ship. So if you're working on a sea fort, you don't necessarily want to be working on a sea fort when you're defending, or like a fort of fortune, or like a fort, because it's going to be actively trying to take you and the opposing team out, and you may be on the worst side of that situation. Additionally, you don't want to be on like an island working on Order of Souls or merchants or gold hoarders, because if it's a big island and it takes you a while to get back to your ship, it could be too late. You could have already been in a bad spot or a bad position when you get invaded, and it's hard to know. So there's like a give and take. Like, you never want to get too invested on defending, because if you do, you might lose out on the next battle because of the circumstances, which is a risk you have to take. And I recognize that. Likewise, if you go diving, you're kind of stuck in a tough spot where you are giving up the ability to do anything else while you're waiting. And you really don't have a good gauge of when you're going to find a match, because the match times aren't currently reflecting the accurate time to find an opponent. So those are some of the things that I think are the biggest pain points with the community right now that I've been hearing from. And I'm hoping that in the coming month, we'll be able to see a patch roll in that will help try and alleviate some of those major pain points, so folks can get back to having fun PvPing. The last thing that I wanted to touch on before I jump into reviewing 2022 is the new adventure. In 3 weeks, as of recording, we are going to be getting an adventure at the end of this month called The Secret Wilds. This is an adventure right now that features the skull of Briggsy, as well as a photo. Like a painting. I can't say photo. It's a painting, roughly, of Madame Olivia in Order of Souls tent. In the Secret Wilds refers to something that's going on with the secret that Briggsy had, and what's been going on with the wilds. Why there's been areas of the wilds that have blue sky, green grass, growing trees, a fervor of life. And that's something that I'm very curious about. I cannot wait to figure out what's been going on with the wilds. Is it something that's going to spread? Is it something that's going to go away? Is it something that's just going to stay the way it is because of what happened? Very curious to figure out what's going on lore-wise with that, and see like how much of the orb stream will start to unfold as we get closer and closer into the next arc of stories with Sea of Thieves. Right now, this would be the second, or the climax of not the climax, but the halfway point roughly of the 3 adventure tier for this section of story. And I'm glad that we're going back to Briggsy, because I think this is going to open up a lot more story with the rest of what's going on with Flameheart, what's going on with the Dark Brethren court, and I'm excited to see what's going to happen in the future, and if we're actually going to get the captain this year. All right, next up on today's docket, let's talk about 2022 for Sea of Thieves. I wanted to talk about some of the main highlights for each of the months, kind of what they brought with them and how they kind of ended up being. Kicking off, we're starting off with January. January was pretty interesting because after a fair amount of silence and going into what I think was kind of a lesser season with season 5 or season 4, I think it was season 4. We got season 5, and it kicked off the Sea of Thieves roadmap, which has been a very interesting thing to look back on because it is a very nebulous roadmap. Season 5 was pretty good. I think we got some really nice things that popped off in that, and it kicked off the Community Day, which I think Community Day was very interesting because it was kind of something that really did break Sea of Thieves for a little bit. We got a lot of strawberry beard jokes out of that weekend, and it really showed that players and community members are very interested in events that really kind of showcase themselves, as well as looking forward to, custom cosmetics for that. They had a multiplier that was going to benefit from not only Golden Glory Weekend, but also the fact that it would work with emissaries, and it was based around doing community stuff. It was also the kind of starting or kickoff to the beginning of Sea of Thieves as a new type of community events, as well as adventures, as well as a mystery. And we really kind of got a chance to see what the future of Sea of Thieves was going to be over the next year, and it was very interesting. I'm very glad that they did that, because it's always kind of a scary thing to look back on the roadmap and think like, okay, what hit, what didn't hit, what made sense, and what does the rest of the Sea of Thieves map look like for 2023? Because right now, with the delay of season 7, which we'll get to in July, it was very interesting to see kind of how much was going to have to get shifted to the beginning of next year, or this time right now. Then we moved into February, and with February, we finally got our first adventure, Shrouded Isles. And we actually lost Flameheart as a world event, something that I would say a lot of folks at the time were happy to see go away, but maybe in retrospect, might miss seeing that big red sky or the big red head in the sky. And Shrouded Isles was kind of the kickoff to what Rare was going to start doing for the rest of the year. It was very light. It was not a whole lot, but it did confirm a couple things. We did find out that Flameheart Jr. is actually the servant of Flame, and confirm that, he has been in game for a long time. And I still feel like I wish that had gone slightly different, but I mean, I'm not in charge of the lore at this point, so it doesn't really, I can have hopes and dreams, but that's what they'll stay as. But overall, I was happy to see Belle make a debut in Sea of Thieves. She came in strong and has been a very strong character for the Athena's Fortune, being that Ramsey has, for the most part, been very quiet most of the life of Sea of Thieves. So to get Belle, having her being able to travel between the Sea of the Damned and the Sea of Thieves on her buoy, it has been a great welcome to the community. And I think a lot of the community really have attached themselves to Belle as a main character now, which is fantastic. And kudos to the voice actress who has been doing the voice for Belle, because it's exceptional. Then getting into March. March was very, I would say it was positive and negative. We got the next adventure, which was the Forts of the Forgotten, which felt like they were coming in a little later in the season than I think they wanted. I think they wanted to kick off Forts of Fortune at the beginning of the new season, or right when Sea Forts really kind of hit. And we got Sea Forts earlier in the month, and then I think it was about 2 weeks later we got the adventure for Forts of Fortune, which was actually one of the best trailers, I would say, for Sea of Thieves, because we've had trailers in the past, but we've had a new company kind of brought in to start building out all of these different trailers for the different adventures. They're roughly about 2 minutes, and it was really cool to see story unfold in a cinematic approach for Sea of Thieves in a way that we generally don't ever get to see unless it was like an E3 event. So to get these every month was a real kind of change of perspective on what we were going to have for Sea of Thieves, and I really enjoyed that. We also got the closing for Arena, which was very contentious. A lot of people were jumping onto ships and trading shots or kills or sinks to be able to get as much done in the arena as possible. Arena had been kind of, I don't want to say plagued, but encompassed mostly people going over to different islands and playing team deathmatch or TDM. And as a result, it mostly turned from a naval / player versus player combat to a purely player versus player combat. And trying to get matches naturally were taking a very long time. Not very many people were actually playing the arena. Most of the people that had been playing it had already received all of their triumphant Sea Dog stuff as well as their Pirate Legend weapons. And with the closing of arena, we found out some interesting numbers that roughly about 2% of the player base had actually been engaging in that content. And being that that content was subject to all of the changes that were happening in Adventure, it was tough for them to continue delegating resources to a mode that had so little interaction that was separate from Adventure. So they made the hard choice, which I think was the correct choice, of reducing the team and putting the team that was on Arena and pushing them over to Adventure to work on content for Adventure, and closing the arena, legacying out the achievements for those, and giving everyone all of the ship colors or ship types that were in the arena for anyone that had ever played it, had ever gotten a level. And if you'd reached 50 in arena, then you were awarded a special good boy set that was the Sea Dog livery set. And I know that a lot of people are kind of sad and bummed out that arena is no longer a thing. I still wholeheartedly believe that it was a positive move for adventure mode, and that we've seen changes come to the game that are trying to build and reinforce what adventure is, to kind of allow folks to get the best of both worlds. Also, we got visible fish names. I don't know why that stuck out to me, but visible fish names was something that I think I wanted, that I didn't know that I wanted until they put it in the game, and I realized how much I appreciate it. So along with the rest of the year, there's been a slew of different changes that have come to the game that have been brought through accessibility, which I think is fantastic. And I know that Sightless Combat has been one of the people that have been championing the cause for bringing additional accessibility options that will benefit anyone for Sea of Thieves. So kudos to him and everyone that's been associated with him in their sailing and helping with the Sea of Thieves team to try and develop some of those additional accessibility features. Then we go into April. April brought with us two very important things. One was the next adventure and the close of the first 3-story arc, which was the Shrouded Deep adventure. This was effectively the year 4 anniversary update, and it was a callback to the original Hungering Deep, where we went with Merrick's help to go fight the Hungering One. We then took this and had a really interesting event happen in the game. You had to work with another crew to be able to summon the Shrouded Ghost. This Shrouded Ghost did not count towards the commendations that have been in the game since 2018. And unfortunately still do not gain credit for those commendations. You could summon a Megalodon using a flare at specific islands, which I think was a very interesting and a lovely opportunity for what I think the Hunter's Call could do in the future. You also had a very interesting ship battle at that event, and Merrick once again broke his promise to his wife in saying that he would never go hunting for another ship or another Megalodon or another beast, if you will. So this was another situation where I think there were a lot of really good intents with this adventure. I think the adventure itself was fascinating and a lot of fun. Unfortunately, I think there were a couple bugs that soured the experience for some of us. Namely, the Shrouded Ghost would cause your ship to fly away if it hit you at the right way, or people just not being able to find another crew to be able to help summon, especially given that you had to be on that server and go and kill all of the Megalodons to bring their souls back to a table in the middle of the island that would then spawn a beacon that people could sail over to help summon the Shrouded Ghost. I love the idea. I think the amount of content that's in Sea of Thieves nowadays is what really deterred people from feeling like that was the thing to go do, right? Hungering Deep was the first major content update that came to Sea of Thieves after launch. So everyone that was working on sea forts or killing Krakens, They were looking for something fresh, and the Hungering Deep was that fresh content update. So everyone wanted to go and do it. So everyone went and did it. With the Shrouded Deep, I think it was plagued by the amount of content that had already been in the game when it came out, and folks that weren't too interested or had already done it had since moved on, and they weren't necessarily trying to really help anyone else out during that second week, which is tough. It's really tough to try and build content around bringing people together to try and experience something very unique and very interesting that is a callback to the original days of Sea of Thieves. And they tried very hard to try and recapture some of those early updates from the first year that a lot of us have fond memories from. The other part of April's update brought in something that I think revitalized Athena's Fortune as a faction. We had gotten a lot of content and subsequent updates to the different types of voyages for all of the original trade companies. And with Athena's Fortune, we got the Legend of the Veil voyage, which progressed the story beyond the Shrouded Deep adventure and allowed players to start progressing through the Athena Fortune ranks at a much faster rate and feel a lot better about doing Athena's Fortune for the legendary emissary stuff. The emissaries had always been very tough to do. You always just saw people going out and doing the Thieves Haven runs to try and get Athena Fortune loot to be able to turn in each emissary month to be able to continue to get those emissary ledgers done so you could get those cosmetics. And with the Legend of the Veil, not only did they design it in a way that it was modular so that you could actually have different parts of the voyage show up on a random basis. You weren't necessarily locked into doing the exact same thing every single time. Every single time you did it, it would just be a different combination of the 3 or 4 different modules that they had, which was nice because it brought in a little variety to grinding out these voyages. And it was good because you have to grind out 100 for some of the commendations for it, right? And the other thing was that the Legend of the Veil voyage was designed to give you grade 5 legend or Athena's Fortune for the emissary, and it was designed to stay that way. And a lot of us were very skeptical when it came out because we weren't sure that Rare would keep it that way. And then we found out later on that they were intending to keep it that way, so that players felt like they could actually progress through Athena's Fortune and get a grade 5 and not feel completely annoyed at how many Thieves Haven runs you have to do to get the emissary voyage to be able to get the chest and the keg to be able to turn in so that you could progress in the emissary ranks at a reasonable rate. And the Legend of the Veil voyage, I think, did a great job of revitalizing the Athena's Fortune reputation as well as emissaries. Ahoy there, pirates. This is the ad for this episode, and I did want to let you know if you wanted to avoid these and just get a regular filler, you can head over to the Patreon. There's a special feed just for patrons that get the ad-free version. If you want to keep listening, though, I can't say I blame you, because this week I want to let you know about Loot Crate and getting 15% off of most crates and crate subscriptions when you use the link and code RobotsRadio in the show notes. Also, you can head over to audiobooks.com, get your first 3 audiobooks for free, and that can include any 2 VIP books, or use the affiliate link for Green Man Gaming. If you're a PC gamer or you'd like to save money on games, it's one of the benefits of being a PC gamer. Head over to Green Man Gaming. You can get codes for Steam, Epic, any of the different stores that they have deals going on. They have deals going on all the time, and if you plan on buying there, please consider using our affiliate link. All of that goes straight to me through the network. Thank you all so much for everything that you do to support this podcast. It means the world to me, and I continue to try and improve the quality and the content for you. With that, pirates, let's get back to the show. Then we headed into May. And this was a very interesting update because May brought with it Season 6, as well as the second Community Day, which definitely went better than the first Community Day, but I think still had some of the pain points that were noticed in the first Community Day. A weird thing that stuck out to me during that update was Morrow's Peak Volcano went quiet. I thought that was the heralding of Morrow's Peak as a spawn point for ships. Still isn't. Still kind of hope it would be. You never know. Could actually change in the future here. And then it brought with us the adventure that I think was the first major community decision, which was very interesting to kind of experience. And that was Lost Sands. And this is something that took place over on Golden Sands Outpost. And it was Team Merrick versus Team Reaper. And you really saw kind of Rare testing the waters with their first community decision. We didn't know much about what was going to happen, and we didn't know how balanced it was. They tried to show us realistic numbers as far as where the different teams were on their website, and I think a lot of people appreciated that, but it was hard to know because so many people were on one side or the other, or the rewards were set up so that you could do both sides to be able to get the commendations, that when you looked at the actual results, you really saw a 50-50 split. And that's because a lot of people would go out and they would do it one time for each side, and that was it. It was only the real diehards that wanted to see either one side or the other be saved. And it was either saving Golden Sands with Merrick or destroying Golden Sands with the Reapers. And that's when we started to see a lot more activity from the Reapers, actually see them starting to participate in actual events. So we actually saw them abducting people, stealing items like the trident with the gold hoarder's skull, which we found out were veil stones to be able to look into the Sea of the Damned. And we found out that, they were hiding in bushes all the time and playing Fortnite when we didn't realize it. So it was really kind of cool to see the rest of the world start to kind of come alive, something that I've been asking for a very long time. I want to see more NPC activity. I want to see them doing daily things, being engaged with the community, having tasks for us, things that are beyond the static stand in their place that they've always stood, because that's where they're supposed to be able to sell their stuff or give us voyages. Have more activity. That's what I'm constantly driving with my narrative with Sea of Thieves, is I want to have more activity. And it was very interesting to see how that went into May and how people really kind of connected with it. And some people connected very heavily with it. And that was when we started to actually get Sea of Thieves or Rare as a team starting to kick back up their podcasts, something that they have been kind of good and bad about. It's tough for them putting out as much video content as they do, and also to be able to get the team members together to sit down to talk about content in a way that it accepts that the video version or the podcast itself is going to go out in the future. So what can they talk about? What's currently instated in the game? That's a very tough thing to do. So I don't fault them for being hesitant to try and jump back into that so quickly. But I still really love those different podcast episodes, especially being a podcaster myself, talking about just Sea of Thieves. So May was a very interesting and a very unique time for Sea of Thieves. I think it really kind of kicked off the adventure as well, or not the adventure, the mystery as well. We started to find out that at that time, Ramsey's son, DeMarco, was murdered. And there was a lot of speculation that started going around about that. And there was a lot of ARG content that was drummed up in social media, in the game, as well as outside of the game, to really kind of kick off this mystery. And there was a lot of lessons learned, I think, from this first mystery, things that really connected with the community, things that didn't, that really didn't, as well as having the mystery. Even to this day, the mystery is still accessible to players. You can still actually go and complete the mystery if you know how. And the best way to do that is to head over to Rare Thief and look up the guide for how to solve the mystery for DeMarco's death, because they've done a great write-up for it. And you can follow it step by step with pictures for those of us that have hard time kind of English. We aspire to speak English well one day. That's what our hope is. Yeah. So May, very interesting. Then we get into June, and I think June is it was a very interesting month, because that was the month that not only did we get the Forsaken Hunter, which was the last adventure that we would get for a while, it solidified our realizing that Merrick was killed. which was very interesting to do a 2-week adventure of Merrick being killed at the same time that we're trying to solve the mystery of who killed DeMarco. Whereas with the adventure, it was spelled out plainly that the masked stranger, should I say masked stranger? I guess I should say masked stranger, but it's spoilers for those that may not have been there during the time, but it's Amaranta from the Sea Dogs, who killed who killed Merrick, and also confessed that she was not the person who killed DeMarco, even though a lot of us thought that it was, which we did actually find out, but I'm not going to spoil that in case you haven't done it. Again, go to Rare Thief, look up the guide, go spend a couple hours working through the mystery finale and experience it for yourself. Otherwise, I think I've got a video of it on my YouTube channel, so check the videos if you guys want to find that as well, if you just want to watch the ending. I really enjoyed doing it, though. I will say I really did get a kick out of working my way through all that. It's convoluted as heck, though, so don't expect to work it out yourself, because man, there was a lot that happened with people data mining the actual answers to a lot of the ARG stuff, and I think a lot of folks just got frustrated and wanted to kick off the ending to it, so they kind of went in, dug out the answers, and then posted them all over the internet for people to find. And then by the time people found it, because that's how content creation works, it was kind of spoiled for a lot of folks, and it was too tough for the casual Sea of Thieves fan to really keep up with. Even the hardcore fans, I think, still had a lot of hard time keeping up with the pacing and finding of the answers from the community when they did. So it was a very interesting month for June. That was also when we found out that season 7 was going to be delayed, and that season 7 was going to deal with captaincy. And that brings us into July. July was the big delay for season 7. Season 7 brought with it captaincy. And when we did get it towards the end of the month, it was very interesting to find out some things. It was bittersweet because we had been waiting for what the captaincy update was going to be. We had heard rumors, or not rumors, we had heard from Mike Chapman forever ago, back in 2017, about what the captaincy was going to be, and the idea of what it was. And now with season 7 having years of content years of game development under their belts, Rare had finally pulled together the ability for us to name our ships and to track our content, or our milestones, if you will. And it was kind of bittersweet because after 3 years or 4 years of playing the game, we finally got a way to track a lot of the stuff that we do in Sea of Thieves, but it wasn't something that was retroactive except for the Shrouded Ghost, which still kind of a pain point. If you're going to do it for that, why not other things, especially if you could still track it? But the general consensus was that if you got a captain ship, you were now starting off as a captain, and you were the captain of that specific ship, and that your milestones would be counted towards that specific ship or any other captain ship that you were on. And I think a lot of folks are still kind of on the fence about how they feel about this, or they're definitely in one side or the other. And I think it's a very polarizing thing, but at the end of the day, a lot of folks have just kind of had to swallow the answer, which is you have to accept that this is how captaincy works. And it's a tough thing, I think, for a lot of fans, as well as the devs, to try and have to make that call. So I don't envy the devs at all for that, because it would definitely be very hard for them to justify some things versus others and then to go through with this decision. But captaincy brought with it a huge gold sink, which was definitely needed for Sea of Thieves. And I think that gold sink is something that has been a real boon to folks who have had millions and millions of gold, because you can now buy supplies for your ship. You can now buy trinkets and different milestone trophies for your ship. You could actually go in and name your ship if you wanted to, and you could buy ship crests, which we still haven't really gotten any new ship crests for, which is a shame, but I'm expecting more of that kind of content in the future. And it was nice to finally be able to say, this is my ship. This is the name of my ship. And I finally got to name my ship after all these years. Sadly, my ship is the one the one that I've named for a long time is actually not the one that I use the most. The one that I use the most is probably my sloop, which is just out for or just on lunch break. And then next to that would probably be my galleon, which is the Keelhauled crew. But overall, I would say that captaincy was a real boon to Sea of Thieves. It was close to being as big as, I would say, a pirate's life, which I know I kind of waver on depending on when you ask me. Sometimes I think it's better. Sometimes I think it's less as good as a pirate's life, because I think a pirate's life really like day one issues plagued Tall Tale 2. But outside of that, I think A Pirate's Life was probably one of the best stories that Rare has ever created in Sea of Thieves through the Tall Tales, and a very succinct story that they did at that. That really still leaves a lot of question in my mind about what's going to happen in the future of Sea of Thieves with that kind of content. So captaincy itself finally kind of hit the little checkbox on the list of requests for Sea of Thieves. Originally, the idea was that the first content update for Sea of Thieves in June of 2018 was going to be captaincy and pets. We didn't get pets until 2019, I believe, is when we got the original 3 pets, and then subsequently dogs and then foxes later. Which I would not be surprised if we got another avian pet in the near future. Maybe we could get another type of I can't think of, what are they called? Simians? No. The monkeys, orangutans, chimpanzees. I can't think of kombuchans. I think is kombuchans. I can't think of what it is. Another monkey type pet. But I think we kind of checked that off right there. So I think we're good on that one. I think we're getting another flying pet soon, but who knows if it'll be owls or not. We'll have to wait and see. And I'm getting lost in the weeds here. Where was I going with that? So July, the delay in season 7 really did push everything back. And you can tell going into October, November as well too. But with August, we got Captains of Adventure, which is kind of we started to see a lot of tweaks with the milestones, with the name ships. We also got in August our next adventure, which was the first one since June. And that was A Hunter's Cry. Now, A Hunter's Cry, I think on paper was great. I think in actual practice, I think A Hunter's Cry was a bit of a failure for the team. I feel like they did not anticipate properly the toxicity that the community can have with players who were still upset about back in February with the arena closing. And or I guess it was March that the arena closed, and because of that, you were now put into a specifically decided like lore environment where you were going to be playing through an adventure which was developed to progress the story, and you were going to go rescue Merrick from the Sea of the Damned, from a distorted version of the Sea Dog Tavern. And as a result, instead of what was a very interesting callback to the Sea of the Damned that we had with A Pirate's Life Tall Tales, we had pirates who were now camping and TDMing, pirates who had no recourse. If you sank, you spawned at the beginning of the Tall Tale adventure in the Sea of the Damned, and the only way to get out of this this lock case scenario was you had to cancel your Hunter's Cry voyage, and you had to go back into the regular world. You had to go sail over to the unmarked isle at K9, talk to Bell again, and then sail back into the Sea of the Damned, and then hope that you got paired with another couple of crews who were not looking to PvP and looking to actually work through the PvE narrative that was going on there. And PvP, unless explicitly turned off, will always be available to people in Sea of Thieves. I think the taking of the story and moving those to their own instance where it's just one crew is the safest way for players to be able to experience the story that's going on. And you see the struggle that Rare has with making a game that is both PvE and PvP. They want to keep that game and that essence there, and that is always going to be a tumultuous it's going to be a minefield to navigate for the team as they continue to think about how they want to progress the story, how they want to bring that story to the game, how they're going to make it accessible for players, and what's the worst thing players are going to do with that environment. And I think Rare really has to kind of take one on the cheek on this situation and really think about future content and what they're going to do to ensure that players aren't getting a negative experience because of other players as they're trying to progress through stuff like this. Overall, though, I will say that I enjoyed these narratives. I think they did, and I think they are doing an excellent job of creating 2-week stories that come every 3 weeks and allow players to really kind of see the world evolve. In fact, I think that what was it? The Forsaken Hunter was probably one of the best adventures that I'd played through. Because I got to see something that I'd never seen before in Sea of Thieves. I got to see a character open a portal to the Sea of the Damned, which had other characters in that portal, which was a flat item on the actual world. Like you could walk behind that thing and see behind it. And actually go up into the portal and traverse between Sea of Thieves and Sea of the Damned through this staff that they had that now had the Gold Hoarder's skull tied to it. And having moments like that in Sea of Thieves is still some of the standout content that I think about on a regular basis, where I'm like, man, that was a moment to me. That was a moment that really spoke to what Sea of Thieves can do as a storytelling mechanism. And I still really look forward to situations where you're going to be able to see the world progress and the story move forward with these characters that I've loved and endear for the game play out in the actual adventure mode, which is great. And I'm wondering eventually if we're going to see the adventure mode kind of take over the splash page, because right now we have kind of two modes. We have adventure mode and we have a pirate's life. And eventually a pirate's life is going to be something that probably won't be as relevant as the story progresses. And I can imagine that contractual agreements are in place right now to ensure that players have access quickly to go see the Disney Jack Sparrow stuff if they want. But I don't think that that's going to be the case for the future. And I'm interested to see where that goes as we kind of move forward with the rest of the story for Sea of Thieves. Then we move into September. And September was the Siren's Prize adventure, and as well as a notable change to some of the PvP that actually happens with Sea of Thieves, with a promise of what was going to be a PvP focused season 8. There were hints and teases of this. So what happened was they actually went in and started to change the ferry times so that if you died on a sloop, you would come back to your ship faster than if you were dying on a galleon. And they also reduced the ability to be rezzed on an enemy player ship. Once you died on an enemy player ship, that was it. You couldn't be rezzed. So it was very interesting to kind of see some of the changes that were coming that were foretelling what was going to be the highlight of season 8. Sorry, I had to get a drink just then. Getting to the adventure for the Siren's Prize. This was very unique to me because not only did I think this adventure was one of the more forgettable ones, it's tough because it's actually one of the few that gave us so much lore about the ancients and what happened to them that it's really hard to ignore that this is such an instrumental storytelling event that unfortunately people will only be able to go back and see in retrospect. And thanks to the Sea of Thieves wiki for having all of the journals brought to the Sea of Thieves wiki, so that if you wanted to go back and actually check out the Siren's price, you'd be able to, or prize, sorry, I don't know why I keep saying price, but you'd be able to go back and actually read all of those journals, which is great for us lore hounds to be able to remember and think, oh, okay, this is what happened to the ancients and stuff, and to be able to help Bell with the ancients and bringing back the warrior. It was very, I don't know, I feel like that's one of those ones where, because I had such a hard run in with what the expected mechanics were for that adventure, and I was so caught up with the journals, that I feel like I still really missed out on what the whole point of the actual adventure was. But because of that, that actually pushed us into the next adventure in October, which was the Herald of the Flame adventure, which honestly I can say is my favorite adventure. I think the Herald of the Flame adventure did two things. It tied up the loose ends that were going on with Stitcher Jim at the end of Heart of Fire, and it brought us to the Roar and a Molten Sands outpost or fortress that really did kind of give us a unique experience that was kind of directly tied to Flameheart. And it really did kind of say like Flameheart is for sure coming back. And that was a very exciting adventure. I think a lot of folks had trouble with some of the completions. There were some things that weren't registering, like if you tried to talk to the birds. But overall, the Herald of the Flame adventure is by far one of the best storytelling adventures that I think Rare had done. It was exciting. It had really good checkpoints in there built in, so that if you missed out on part of it, you could jump in at different points and be able to continue from there. And it genuinely was really nice to be able to kind of follow along with Bell and Pendragon as you followed the story of what happened to Stitcher Jim after Heart of Fire, after he had gotten exposed to the curse, the Ashen curse that was in the Ashen chest. And being able to see like what happened to his madness, driving him insane and causing him to really hate Flameheart for what he had tricked him into doing, and then finding out that the trick was not actually a trick but a gift, and then turning him into an Ashen Lord, and then being able to fight a Stitcher Jim version of, or an Ashen Lord version of Stitcher Jim on Molten Sands Fortress, and having all of that encompassed in roughly an hour's worth of time. It was very well done and really did utilize what I thought was something that has been kind of put on the back burner, ironically enough, for how hot it is, but the Forsaken Shores. I really think the Roar is really kind of, I lament the Roar. I think that there is a lot that was potential for that. I think that captaincy has really helped be able to make going out to the Roar easier. You get more supplies now. You can buy more supplies and stuff, and it's just easier to deal with the Roar out there. And I'm kind of interested to see us kind of go back there, because I still think it is a very unique place, and I still think of it as hard mode for Sea of Thieves. But I really have to say that the Herald of Flame was 10 out of 10 for me. Little issues aside, I think it was probably one of the best adventures they've ever written. And I think a lot of that really does kind of tie to the commitment to telling or finishing the story for the last kind of tall tale that they had for Sea of Thieves, which was Heart of Fire, which ironically enough, Heart of Fire is by far the best, in my opinion, the best tall tale that Rare has put out. They took into consideration the number of completions required. They built around that. The content was compelling. The experience was unique for each little pathway that you took. And it took you to places that you hadn't been in a long time. You hadn't really gone back to the Roar in a fair amount of time. So it was nice to really kind of have that moment. So having Heart of Fire after Seabound Soul be kind of left unattended for so long, to have the Herald of the Flame adventure come in and really tie it back into the Flameheart story and really kind of tee up the next adventure that allowed us to really kind of see what the future of Sea of Thieves is going to be, what they really, really wanted to do with Flameheart, which has been kind of this looming villain that really hasn't had any teeth to this point, and hopefully will in the near future. And that kind of takes us to some of the other stuff in October that I really enjoyed. There was the Trickster and Treaters event that had some issues. It was a nice way to kind of bring back some of the go out and do this to get favors, to get content. And then eventually, I think because of some of the issues that they ran into, you could tell that this was kind of kicked up pretty quickly. And if it wasn't, I'm very curious how the testing went for it, because it felt like something that was in place of an October Halloween event that we didn't see until November. But one of the highlights that I actually personally had for October was working with Deadeye Dre, and they created a story for the Bleakheart Banshee set that came to the Emporium that, for all intents purposes, was just a normal everyday expansion to the Emporium sets that are out there. But for some reason, something about that set and the little bit of story that they tossed in with the flavor text for each piece really connected to me. And I got an opportunity to work with Deadeye Dre from Golden Sands Outpost, or blog post, and actually kind of build out this story. And they did an exceptional job of writing the history behind Bleakheart Banshee. And I really appreciated that, because it meant something to me that I don't know if the community really recognized as much as I think they should, which is players creating the story of things that have happened around Sea of Thieves that don't intrinsically change the Sea of Thieves. Like, nothing about the story that we created will actually impact Sea of Thieves as far as I know. But the community came together, in this case, they and myself, and we wrote a beautiful story about the history of the Bleakheart Mansion and the Bleakheart Banshee. And to this day, I still look at that as one of my favorite little things that was created around Sea of Thieves, because it was a story that no one was asking for except me. And someone took a lot of their time and worked very hard on it so that I could create a kind of radio story Halloween event over the course of 2 weeks to tell to everyone else. And I will be forever grateful to Dre for their time for that. That kind of takes us into November, which I think was very interesting, because I think Herald of the Flame, along with the Tricksters and Treaters event, and then moving into November, you could see that Rare was making up for lost time. Because season 7 had been delayed so much, they really had to play catch up with their adventures. And as a result, we started getting content after content after content after content. And it was actually very exciting, but also very busy for people who wanted to experience it, who play other games as well too. And in November, we got Return of the Damned, which was Team Pendragon versus Team Flameheart. Spoilers, Team Flameheart won. And in both situations where there's been a community decision, I have sided with the losing side. This time I sided with Pendragon because I love that character, and Flameheart won. In the battle for the Golden Sands Outpost, I went for the Reapers, and Merrick won. So I've always been on the losing side, which I guess is my lot in life at this point. But having a second community decision, this one felt less impactful because it required you to go out and capture sea forts and raise a banner in the name of the team that you wanted to represent. And the more sea forts that you had claimed when you had taken a doll and bewitched it by killing a soul flame captain that had been pulled in from the Sea of the Damned, you would then turn those dolls into the respective person. And we started to see the community do what the community does, which is try to impede other people's experience. And in this case, players were trying to spawn ghost fleets or things like Order of Souls missions on Shipwreck Bay where Merrick or not where Bell and Pendragon were set up as the turn-in points for the little dolls that you had to collect from the different sea forts. And this is another situation where it looked like a lot of people kind of kicked it off at the beginning of the first week, and then as you went out for the rest of the second week, very few people were out there actually claiming forts. But we didn't see the numbers for it. We saw some general numbers for the actions that happened around it, but we did get a really nice stream afterwards that kind of showcased which team actually won, in which case Flameheart had won. And as a result, Pendragon was then banished to the Sea of the Damned and trapped within a portrait. I think he was trapped within a portrait. So we are now waiting to see what the results of that community decision will be, as it will herald in the returning of Flameheart. And whether or not he comes back as a skeleton lord, as he is at the moment, or if we will see him brought back to a human form as a result of the latest adventures and the curse that's going on with that, remains to be seen. But season 8 kicked off in November, and it was the beginning for the battle for the Sea of Thieves. And this was met with a lot of praise. A lot of folks are very happy with season 8 because it brought PvP back to Sea of Thieves in a very interesting way. Much like I talked about in the beginning of this episode, some of the issues that folks are having with it now. At the beginning of season 8, everyone was in their honeymoon phase with it. Plenty of people were jumping into the mode. You could get a battle almost instantly. And folks were really starting to learn how good or bad they were at Sea of Thieves. And many players started to notice that there were completely new areas of different parts of the world that were only accessible to those that had reached level 100, with these 2 new factions that had been tacked on to the existing factions that we had already. So now, on top of being level 75 with the Reaper's Bones, you now had to progress to level 100 in your allegiance to the Reaper's Bones to be able to gain access to the Reaper's Lair. You would then get access to the Skeleton Curse, as well as the rest of the different augments to the Skeleton Curses by progressing beyond level 100 up to 200. The max, of course, the max reward being at level 1000 and being able to cap out, I think, at 9,999, but no one is probably going to be able to reach that for quite some time. A lot of folks have been able to get to 1,000, the top echelon of players out there in the community, the real true PvPers who have a lot of skill and fortitude for that kind of thing. And I personally am at the point where I'm bummed out because I am not anywhere close to getting to 100. I deal with anxiety, I found out, and it's something that's prevented me from being able to play a lot of horror games. But it also is also something that prevents me from jumping into PvP. Something about playing against other players and knowing that there is a skill gap there that I am dealing with really kind of gets my my heart rate high. And I get anxious and I have a really tough time overcoming that feeling of adrenaline, like being able to stay calm in those situations without locking up or feeling like I'm causing the issue here. So for me, the PvP experience has been a halting moment where I can't go see a lot of the new content that I want to see that is tied to the lore of the game, because at the moment, my personal issues are prohibiting me from getting there as fast as I would like to get there. I would love to be able to get down into the Reaper's Lair to be able to check it all out and to see what's going on with the tree, because I know that the tree is now tied to lore thanks to Mike Chapman's teases. But because I can't PvP that much at once without really feeling like I need to step back or step away or go calm myself, I feel locked out of that content. And it's a true bummer for me because I really want to go check it out. I really want to get my Skeleton Curse. I really want to get my Ghost Curse. I want to go visit those places, and I'm looking forward to that time at some point. But I'm disparaged by things that are preventing me that I can't change about myself. It's tough to feel like my body isn't allowing me to go do the things I want to do because I just can't process those emotions as well as other people. And because of that, it's a hindrance. So it's a real shame. But I'm still trying. And I think that's the key. I think the fact that I'm going in, I'll do 1 or 2 matches, and then I have to stop and say, okay, this is as much as I can handle. I need to go do something else. I need to go relax. I need to go like fish or something like that to get out of this feeling, this anxiousness that I'm dealing with right now. And that kind of brings us to December. December brought with it the adventure, The Rogue's Legacy, which was kind of a fun harkening back to the original Tall Tales with Tasha and the cursed rogue, as well as the story times, the stories that Briggsy would tell Tasha as a kid that her father said were all lies, until she found out that they were all true stories. So we also got an opportunity to see that there are some changes going on with the wilds as a result of this adventure. And the wilds is now in an interesting place because a lot of people really don't like the wilds. It's oppressive, and it's intended to be oppressive because of the design behind it. It's designed to make you feel sad or unhappy. And while you're there, you're not necessarily having as much fun as if you were in the wilds, or the ancient isles, or the shores of plenty, right? So you feel better when you come out of the wilds, which causes a lot of folks to not want to spend time in the wilds, especially with horrible islands like Crooked Masts, as opposed to like the really nice ones that are like Kraken's Fall, or Old Faithful, things like that, right? So as we were getting into this Rogue's Legacy adventure, we started to see little patches of the world come to life on these dead islands. And it really does bring a lot of cool questions that I've talked about in the past about. So I'm looking forward to seeing where that goes. Also with December, we got some very interesting changes to the world. We got Blunderbomb kind of fixes to the balance for Sea of Thieves. I think Blunderbombs were something that a lot of folks were noticing were too powerful in Sea of Thieves when it came to PvP. And a lot of battles were decided amongst those, as well as who got cannons first. And I still think that there's a lot of legitimacy to the idea that pirates are coming into matches, and whoever happens to get the broadside first generally wins the bout, which is a shame that it comes to that, because I think that unfortunately really does kind of put the invader and the defender on equal terms in some cases, but it really does depend on how well the defender can respond, because typically in my experience, the defender has first opportunity because they know it's coming dead ahead, and they can start working on their sails and turning the boat faster than the invader, who has to wait for the actual emergence to be able to gain access to their characters to be able to go and turn. And actually, like, you can do as much prep work as you want before you actually arise out of the water. But even if you raise the sails on your ship and turn the wheel, as soon as you get out of the water on an invasion, your sails are all down, your wheel is set to center. And it's tough because the defender can always take first advantage of that case. And I think that that's kind of a shame. So I'm hoping that that's something that maybe we can have a discussion on to see if that is as integral to a win or a loss as I think it may be, or if it's really not as big a deal as I'm making it out to be. But one of the amazing things that did actually come from this patch update was supply barrels. You now get more supplies when you actually load up a ship, or if your ship respawns. And when you sink a ship, even if it's your own, the barrels from those ships actually float to the surface, and you have about 15 minutes to be able to go and actually grab those supplies. So when you load in, you can actually scuttle, go grab a mermaid, sail back over to the outpost, which generally is one island away from where you scuttled, grab your barrels, buy a supply crate, and get double of the supplies for the 15 minutes that it takes to scuttle, sail back over, and grab your barrels out of the water. It's fantastic. I really love the concept of this, and I love the idea that the ship that wins expended as much supplies as it needed to be able to sink the other ship. If it expended a lot of supplies and the other ship had more supplies and less skill, then you're rewarded by getting those supplies. It's tough because I think I've seen a lot of folks really come to the agreement that generally after a couple of fights, you're going to have more cannonballs than you ever need, which is a weird place to be in a game that potentially could be made to really kind of handle wars of attrition, where it really will come down to how many cannonballs you have. And if players are running into a situation where they are sinking people that have a lot of cannonballs and you have 2,000 cannonballs after a few matches, it's going to be really hard for other players to combat that if they're coming into a fight with not nearly as many supplies, if they've just been getting into the game and they didn't buy or they didn't stock up. So I don't know how well you can really attribute what's going on with the balance for that to something that can be fixed with a patch or not, but we'll have to kind of see, and Rare will ultimately decide if it's as big an issue as it needs to be. But it's still very interesting that they did this. I think this is something that honestly should have been in the game from the start. I don't know what tech they've put into the game that didn't allow for them to have this in from the start. I think Barrel 2.0's back in gosh, was it the second year? I think it might have been the second year when the Barrel 2.0 system came into play, and everyone hated it then, but no one's complaining about it now. I think that the supply barrels floating up from wreckage really ought to have been something that came earlier in the game, because it really is probably one of the best changes that I've seen. Better than stools, better than fireworks, better than quest boards. I better than Dark Adventure sales. Supply barrels, I think, have been one of the biggest boons to the quality of life for Sea of Thieves than anything else that's really come in a long time. I think harpoons and storage crates are like the other two standouts that I would say, like, if Sea of Thieves didn't have these things, Sea of Thieves would be worse off, like exponentially worse off. And it's definitely harpoons, storage crates, and the supply barrels rising up from sinking ships. And I think that's kind of it as far as 2022 goes. It's been a very interesting year. I think there's been a lot of changes to the game for better. I think that they've really kind of honed in what they want to do with stories as far as telling stories or telling the narrative of Sea of Thieves. I think adventures have hit really well as far as like bringing content to the world on a regular basis that players can experience. It does create a sense of FOMO, but I do think that that if you do miss out on that stuff, you're not missing a ton. You're really not missing a whole lot. You're getting maybe one or two mementos from the adventures that really aren't that impactful. Like if you have them, you have them. If you don't, it's not the end of the world. So I do like that aspect. We've also seen some really good changes to Athena's Fortune, as well as bringing in the Battle for Sea of Thieves and expanding a system of leveling that goes beyond just the original reputations and adds a little more flavor to Sea of Thieves in the sense of PvP. As a result, it's also made the regular seas a lot safer too. I think I was sailing on Saturday with Kylia the aficionado in Big Bad Pad, and we were working on emissary ledgers, and we didn't get bothered at all. We saw reapers come and go, we saw people dive, and we never had any issues with that. And we got to do whatever we wanted as a result. We were ready for a fight, and we were okay with getting into a fight, but genuinely no one ever did kind of come at us. So it gave us the ability to work on our ledgers in peace, which was fun because I know, at least from my perspective, Kylia was not feeling well, and I would hate to have to put that much stress on someone who is struggling with feeling sick at the moment, especially when all they're trying to do is work on something as silly as emissary ledgers that we could always work on this month as opposed to last month. But it gave us an opportunity to hang out, and I think I treasure those moments more than anything else in Sea of Thieves, is the time I spend with other folks. So now that 2022 is behind us, or 2022, I don't know why I said 2022, that's dumb. That's not a way you say years. As that's behind us, looking forward to 2023, I don't know what the future is going to hold, but I can say that there are a few goals in game that I've set out for myself, and I think goals are very important. In fact, as I was kind of thinking about it today, and with it being the new year, everyone likes to try and set goals for themselves. And one of the things that I said to someone online that I hope they take to heart, it ties to kind of setting up goals for yourself. And this is what I'd kind of written out for them. Goals are everything in my mind. If you don't have something to drive toward, you're just letting go of the wheel. Take the helm, set sail with intent. Only you know where you're going. Everyone else is just helping trim the sails or burn pineapples. And I 100% believe that. Everyone around you is either helping or harming you, but only you know what you're going to do in the future, and you should be the one that is in control of that. So get those goals. Set them for yourself. Even if you don't achieve them, the fact that you set them shows intent, shows drive, and you're the one that's going to be the one that's driving. So make sure that you grab the helm, make sure you set that heading, and you make sure that that your sails are trimmed to catch as much wind as you can to accomplish those goals. So for 2023, one of the main goals that I have, I want to be able to attend the SOT fests that are going to be going on. The UK one is pretty locked in for right now, but there is an NA one that Dead Pirate Doug is working on, that I hope comes to fruition and allows folks that are in the NA that can't travel across countries to be able to go to meet up with many of us across the entire country who have been wanting to actually spend time with us. In 2020, I got a chance to meet a whole bunch of folks in January at a small get together in San Francisco, and that was fantastic. And it wasn't until 2022 that I got to even meet any other people for Sea of Thieves at SOT Fest UK. Now with 2023 happening and the pandemic under wraps, or coconut fever under wraps, I'm looking forward to having 2 SOT fests to go to meet up with my UK friends that I love over there, and also any of the NA friends that I haven't gotten to meet yet that will become new friends. Besides that, I wanted to talk about some of the commendations in Sea of Thieves that have been lingering around for many years that I've been sitting on. So one of the main ones that I have that may come as a surprise is the Sailor of Athena's Fortune commendation. This is the one that you need to do to be able to get your Pirate Legend capstan. And I didn't realize it until today that I am at 941 miles of 1,000. I am 59 miles away from being able to get my Pirate Legend capstan. And the fact that I didn't have it kind of makes me feel embarrassed that it's been this long that it's been in the game. And I never thought that I actually should put down a voyage to continue sailing on those miles. It's kind of silly. The other one that I wanted to get is the legendary Merchant of Fauna. I am only at grade 2 of this, and it's embarrassing because I've only turned in 88 animals on time as a Pirate Legend since 2018. 88 animals. That's it. So I'm going to start working on animal voyages. I'm going to start trying to get them. I'm going to try and start actually turning them in on time so that I can work on that, as well as the Merchant Voyager, which I'm at grade 5 for, and I have 175 out of 250 merchant voyages complete, which boggles my mind. I do not know how I have 175 merchant voyages complete out of 250, but I've only turned in 88 animals on time since becoming Pirate Legend, which really does speak to the fact that back in the day, all you had was animals, which means that all of the animals that I've turned in over the years has only been during the time where I wasn't Pirate Legend, because that was all we had versus skeleton forts. That was it. But I'm very, very like gung-ho driven to try and get these animals safely to the Merchant Alliance so that they can finally get them to the places they need to be, which is probably a frying pan if we're being 100% honest. Let's not kid around. They're getting cooked somewhere outside of the Sea of Thieves. I don't know where, but somewhere. So I've got a long way to go. It's at 100 for grade 2, so I can't even imagine how many animals I'm going to have to turn in to get to grade 5, but that's on the list. Then I want to work on the legendary Hunter of the Ancient Terror. This is the only other Megalodon commendation that I don't have done besides the Shrouded Ghost. And right now I'm at 33 of 50 in grade 5, which means that I still have the last, 17 more ancient terrors to kill. So it's going to be my goal, and this is going to take longer sessions, but I want to go and make sure that when I'm sailing around, if I encounter Megalodon, regardless of what it is, I kill it so that I put myself into the pool of potential recipients of a different type of Megalodon that will hopefully be an ancient terror. Which means that it's going to really kind of slow down my day to day as I go out sailing. But I want to try and get that one finished up so that all I have left is the Shrouded Ghost. Then I want to work on 2 different Voyage Veil completions besides the Merchant's one. And the first one is the Gold Hoarder Voyages, the Gold Voyager, which I'm very close on. I'm on grade 5. Out of 250, I've got 203 complete Gold Hoarder voyages. This is one that has been popping up on my Xbox as you're near the achievement for this. And it's been taunting me for far too long. I need to just knock out the last 47 voyages and just get them done. I need to complete this so I can get it off of the Xbox screen, because that and the Merchant Voyager one have been constantly rubbing it in my face that I'm not running voyages. The other one that's a voyage that I want to get done is the Veil Seeker one. Now, this one's going to be a little bit tougher because this one is the complete 100 Legend of the Veil voyages. Right now, I'm at grade 4. I have 35 out of 50 complete, which means to complete 100 more, I'm going to need to do 65 more Veil voyages. And I'm there for it because I definitely don't mind doing those, but it's going to be hard to work on Veil voyages as well as Merchant voyages to try and get the Merchant of Fauna stuff done. I don't know how. That's my goal for 2023, to try and finish those voyages. And I think the last one that I have to do is something that I can kind of pair up with the Gold Voyager one. I still have 47 more voyages for the Gold Hoarder to do. And I have the Hoarder of Ancient Tributes commendation, which is complete or return 50 chests of ancient tribute to the Gold Hoarders. And that's kind of the vaults, right? I need to get the vaults done. So right now I'm at grade 5. I've got 38 of 50 chests turned into the Gold Hoarders. And I want to try and get that one knocked out as well too. I want to try and get those vault ones done, because if I can get those done, then that will help kind of round out the sales, the livery sets that I don't have special that are tied to those commendations. So really, I'm trying to take a look at some of the sets that I have for my ship that I am missing pieces from, and seeing which of those I can start working on to try and finish up those sets. Because I'm hoping that with me working on animals, with me working on veils, with me working on vaults, that I can start to build up the gold that I don't have to be able to finish purchasing up the Dark Adventurer set. And that's kind of one of the main other goals that I want to do, is I want to try and get the Dark Adventurer set knocked out, because it's a lot of gold. It's very tough to try and get all of that. And it's going to take me a lot of time to work on those that I won't be able to put into for the different allegiances for defending. Now, and that's the other thing too, is the fear of losing loot. I love denying loot, but I hate losing it. So defending while on the battle for Sea of Thieves is something that I'm always very scared of, because I don't want to lose my loot, and I'm not as comfortable in PvPing as I used to be. And as a result of that, it's tough for me to want to risk going and defending on the battle for Sea of Thieves while working on a Veil voyage or a vault, and having all that treasure and losing it as a result. I know the risk and reward is there, but I don't know that I'm comfortable enough taking that risk. Which is always a choice, right? It's always something that is a choice for you to make. But that's kind of what my goal is for 2023. And I'd be curious to hear if any of you have done any goals for 2023. It's always the custom in the beginning of the year. You set goals for yourself and you try and accomplish them. These are the ones that I've kind of set up for myself, and I'll be interested to see come 2024 where I landed with a lot of these. I'm going to be saving this document online so that I can refer to it and see like if I've what I've been able to complete, what I've been able to work towards, and see like, how good am I at accomplishing my goals? Was I able to get my skeleton curse? Was I able to get my ghost curse? Was I able to knock out the rest of my pirate legend Athena's Fortune commendations? Was I able to finish up my gold hoarder and merchant commendations? Will I ever consider working on the hunter's call stuff? Probably not. We'll have to see. But those are kind of the things that I wanted to do for this episode to kind of set the stage for the rest of the year, knowing nothing about the story or where it's going to take us, but understanding that my pirate still has check boxes to hit. And if there's anything I can do for myself, it's to round out the sets of cosmetics that I set out and have accomplished most of, but not all. And I want to try and do that for myself. I want to try and say that I can work on these and I can complete these because they are achievable goals, and I'm willing to set those for myself and make sure that I focus on them. So I hope that you do the same. I hope that you do that for not only your pirate, but also for yourself in 2023. I hope you work towards becoming the better person that you can be this year. Do the thing that is going to be a little outside of your comfort zone. Try and push yourself to be a little more productive or a little better or a little more healthy, or to be open to different experiences and have fun with stuff. Try some different foods. Have someone push you in a direction that you normally wouldn't go to do something. And I think that's going to be it, Pirates. I think that's going to do it for this episode. So if you enjoyed this, if you liked it, as always, there's plenty of ways to let me know. You can always head over to Twitter at Sea of Thieves, at CAPT_LOGUN. You can always message me there. You can always reply to the tweets that I do for the Sea of Thieves content that I put out. You can also head over to at Keelhauled Pod on Twitter as well too. I've got the podcast account there for now. You can also write in too. There's also the email CAPTLOGUN@gmail.com, and we have the Discord too. And just tonight we're actually trying to get some folks the Grogmanay stuff before it ended up, but unfortunately it didn't work out. But the Sherpa program's there if people want to learn how to do some stuff. They're there to help try and instruct folks on how to get through the game, since not a lot of it is explained. But there's also the adventure folks as well too. If you're looking to join up with other folks, you can always post in there and see if anyone's available. I always keep an eye on it, but I don't always have an opportunity to jump into sail with folks because I'm usually working on something else, or just distracted by other games at the moment that I'm like trying not to be addicted to. So but I think that's going to do it, Pirates. So with that, thank you, I love you, and I look forward to sailing with you on the Sea of Thieves.
You've been listening to a Robots Radio podcast. Smart shows for interesting people. Check out all the shows at robotsradio.net.
Are you into the cyberpunk tabletop games or excited for Cyberpunk 2077? Are you looking to brush up on the lore, stay up on all the latest news, and talk about the game when it comes out? Check out the Cyberpunk Lorecast, a show from Robots Radio with me, your host, Robots. We'll go over all the details you need to know about the world, characters, and story of Cyberpunk. Available on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, and anywhere else you get your podcasts.
In a world where solid-state electronics and vacuum tubes are still meta, people never stopped loving atomic-powered everything. A chosen 500 stepped inside a subterranean vault to be spared the nuclear horror of the inevitable Great War. 25 years later, they emerge after the fallout settles to retake Appalachia. Among them, 2 former rivals whose blood feud will tear West Virginia apart in their epic struggle for survival. Chad, a vault bro who has a strength of 15, an intelligence of 2, and is a complete wasteland dickhead. Simon, a complicated anti-hero who chooses light and hope, but accidentally becomes a cannibal and wakes up naked and afraid with a Scorch Beast Queen after a date goes terribly wrong. What? I mean, it's a wild wasteland, right? This dark humor radio drama will have you driving off the road and crawling out from under the fallout. 2 men, 1 wasteland, and so many nukes. Chad, a Fallout 76 podcast, rated R, now streaming on your holotape player podcasty thing.